Wow, the sun's out today. I hope you're having a beautiful day. Guys, in the New Testament, you can find, I would just venture a guess, thousands of verses that teach that all we have to do is receive Jesus by loving him, by wanting to follow him, by recognizing his love, by coming unto him like a child, because he's your father, and you're not going to be turned away. Now, lots of people who still believe in this law, and I know some of you think, why are you still harping on this? We're not under law. We already know that. Well, some of us do. But there is a group of individual Christians that don't yet understand this. There's a couple of different groups. There's one group that really literally thinks we need to go back to the law and even keep holy days and the Sabbath and all these different 613 laws. I suppose there's some that go so, well, I won't say that. I don't know that there's too many that have decided as Christians that we need to go back to the law and keep all these sacrifices. I don't know too many Christians they got altars and a priesthood and they're building temples and they're, cutting lambs and taking them to the altar. It's odd, but all the particular laws that are grievous, that are just ridiculous, that we just couldn't bear today, like making other humans your slaves. I mean, it's illegal, but of course people do, I suppose, there is a legal slavery. It's called work. You punch a time clock, and you're not allowed to eat or have a home or do anything unless you work. But I don't want to get into all the little oddities of, the subtleties of how, mankind is still really in bondage to this law. That the entire government that we live in is based on these laws. And I'm talking about two different groups of Christians. That one who believes that we should go back to pretty much the entire law. They're kind of hypocrites in the sense that they say they believe in the entire law, not just the 10 Commandments, because there's no holy days in the 10 Commandments. And, they'll go through some verse in the Old Testament that says you should have a beard or you should have long hair or short hair or whatever they interpret it as. And they'll say, see, you have to do this in order to be a Christian, in order to be approved of the Lord. Why you should never have a beard, because it says so in some verse of the Bible that they interpret it that way. Now, these guys are more of a hypocrite than most because they're swimming in contradiction. They say we need to go to the law, but then they interpret the law in some strange way that they know is not true, and they're really just doing these things because of some tradition that they have, or their church says so. That's in a kind of a hypocrisy that I don't even know how people can bear. But they just say that we're under these principles, and then they interpret them the way they wish. And this is a lot like the Judeans of that day. They did the same thing, because they had to say they believed in all the laws. I mean, they kept sacrifice and everything. But just like today, even in those days, there were things they just didn't want to do, so they would just interpret it slightly different. Or there were things that they didn't want anybody to even get near to breaking. They wanted to really put people in control and bondage. So they, according to the Bible, it says that those people would put a hedge about the law. The Talmudic Judeans, they put a hedge about the law. So in other words, not only should you not break the law, but don't even get close to breaking it. So we'll make other laws that you should do in order that you don't do the law that is in the Torah. See, so we'll add some laws to make it even more difficult, right, that you might break the law. Well, I want to go into some of the book of Samuel, where it is talking about where the Ark of the Covenant, how it was taken by the Philistines, and this is the time when King David was there, and so they had this war with the Philistines to get that Ark of the Covenant back. Sorry guys, the road's bumpy here. But as we go along here, I think what you're going to find is that it's just going to be amazing, really, to see how much of the story we're not being told or is not being defined properly, even though the text itself does give us so much information. It's like some kind of mystery that's encoded right in the words. And the mystery is even more mysterious when you think about the fact that not one person in thousands of years has ever been able to understand any of this stuff that we're just going to be talking about today, nonchalant. Oh, hey, by the way, right? These mysteries, and we're just going to, share them with you right here. Bam. There it is. It's amazing what the Lord is doing. And there really isn't any way that one cannot come away after hearing these things with very deep appreciation for the things the Lord does, and the fact that we are now here at this time in history where these things are being opened up to our mind. Show you what I'm talking about. Let's go back to the Orthodox Judean Bible, because while there are a couple things I don't like about this translation, well, quite a few things actually, but the only reason I'm using it is because it puts in the names, and I want you to see these Hebrew words and names. Not even the names, some of the other words it puts in Hebrew. Anyway, it starts off, and this is what's going to blow your mind here. The intricate coding that is there that no one ever figured out. in these names. So it says the Philistines, which, we call this the Philistines. So I guess it's important that they write it correctly, and they put Philistines. Well, I'm glad they did, because if you look at the word shittim, a couple of things. Well, first thing comes to my mind is the Ark of the Covenant was made out of shittim. It was wood, but other times it's made out of acacia wood. So I don't know. But the other thing is that the im is plural on the end. So it's sheta or sata. And now in some languages it's literally spelled out Seth. And I'm very certain that this word is one of these names of these deities. And it's literally Set. And as we've said, Set is the same as the Greek Saturn, because the Greeks always put a our or aus or un on the end. So somehow or another they put this Saturn for Satan. And this is where we get Satan. But it goes back to the Greek Set. Now, a lot of words that the Greeks, a lot of their words do come from Egypt, specifically, because when Rome took over, the first thing they did was kind of take over Egypt. There was, the Greeks, the Ptolemies went down into Egypt. Alexander the Great from Greece went down to Egypt and conquered it in like 330 BC. So that's 300 years BC. That the whole area down there in Egypt had been ruled over by the Greeks and then later by the Romans. So it kind of was integrated, their words and a lot of their teachings. So the Egyptian language was heavily integrated. And not only that, but a lot of the mysteries. I mean, as we know, Pythagoras went down there and got the mysteries from Solon and Thales, which were Egyptian priests, and they literally taught these mysteries. This is what philosophy, which is the Greek religion, right? They were all philosophers. They didn't really have a religion, but they had mythologies. And they knew that these mythologies weren't literal, but they understood the importance of them in telling the grand story of the universe. And they probably understood these stories a lot better than we do today. But they use these words, concepts and beliefs and reincarnation and things like this. This was all integrated amongst the Greeks. So history is what is written in the starry sky. All of these words, or these divine beings, had different spellings, but they were the same deity. So the Greeks, or I should say the Egyptians, said Set. But when you write it out in the Greek language, sometimes it was written out Setor or Setu, Sete, Satan. So it's come down to us as Satan. But normally when we think of the Greek deity, we think of Saturn. Because like I said, that, like when we see the word Apollos, usually we see Apollos, but it was written Apollyon, it was written Apollo. It's written with different endings, with different syntax. So this word, Pelishatan, is the word, well, Peli in the Hebrew means like to wonder or something like a miracle or an amazing thing that you're beholding, whatever. We're not really completely certain, and I didn't spend a lot of time trying to really understand what this word Pella meant, but the last part is Satan. So, the word is 6429 Pella Shith. And you can see the phonetic spelling is Pella Sheth. Proper name of a territory, Philistia. In Assyrian, it's Palastu. Palastu. So now look at this. Etymology of the English term Philistine comes from Old French Philistin, from Classical Latin Philistinus, from Late Greek Philistinoi, ultimately from Hebrew Pelisti, plural Pelistine, meaning people of the Pelasheth. And there are cognates in Akkadian or Assyrian and Babylonian Palastu, and Egyptian Palusata. The term Palestine has the same derivation. The native Philistine endonym, assuming they had one, is unknown. I just wanted to show you that, for instance, especially the Egyptian, Palusata. So there's two root words, Palu, which means wonder or miracle, and Sata. That is the land of the Philistines, or the land of Set. So the Philistines were the people of Set, the people of Satan. And they had captured the... Now, notice how they spell it here, Aaron. Well, that's odd. See what I'm saying? They use these words that, well, that's not really a Hebrew word, because it's not written in Hebrew, and it's certainly not any kind of word in English that we're aware of, Aaron. And it's not talking about the Aaronic priesthood, but that's the word that they translate ark, like the Ark of the Covenant. Now, we've heard a lot of few little things about this ark, but we're never really told a lot about this ark. Just that it's this, we're told it's like a big box. And inside this box, there were a few things. There was the 2 tables of stone that Moses wrote on, which is not the sacred pronouncements, but it was the stone that Yahweh wrote with his own finger. And the stone is what the Apostle Paul said was represented our stony heart. So what's interesting is that this word ark here, actually, in many languages, this very word was the same word that they used for a coffin, or a sarcophagus, actually. And so you could say, like for instance, in the Great Pyramid, there is a sarcophagus, but it's empty, right? In the top of the pyramid, it's empty. And I think it's very interesting. When they found it, they never found anything in it. No mummies or anything. Well, why would this tomb be empty? Ever heard of the empty tomb? Yeah, you see, because not only was Jesus put in a tomb, right, and then they found it empty, but so was Osiris. And Osiris was there and was the divine being that was living down there in Egypt. So this is all very symbolic, and it's a story about these Egyptian deities. And the Egyptian deities down in Egypt were literally a story about the patriarchs, because this 18th dynasty that Manetho talks about, he wrote historical books. Before the 18th dynasty, they had these king lists that lived thousands of years, and there's another king list before that that lived even longer, like 30, 50, 100,000 years, these people. Which is interesting because in our Bible, where each one of the patriarchs lived about 30 years and they gave birth to another son, it seems like maybe there is where the coding comes in. Because these kings in the Sumerian tablets and the Egyptian hieroglyphs, they talk about them ruling like 30,000 years, 40,000 years. Well, maybe 30 years old really represents 30,000 years, and then they handed it off to the others. So if the first 30 years of Adam's 930 years of life, if his first 30 years possibly represented 30,000 years, then how long does the last 900 years last? Well, it's almost 1,000,000 years. And that seems to fit very well with the Sumerian chronology. But this ark, then, it's a box. But it's more than just a box. It's a box that holds something very sacred. And the only thing that's really sacred in life is your being. And your being has 3 different compartments. The Ark of the Covenant was a box to put something in. What else do we know of that's like a box that houses something? Well, your body. And the temple also is a box or a square rectangle or something like that that the Ark is in. And there are these 3 walls, the outer court and the inner court and then the most holy. And so in this most holy, you got this another little box. Like it just keeps going deeper and deeper. And inside that box is like, oh, something very deep, right? And right above that box was the mercy seat where the Shekinah glory shone. And it was behind the curtain. So you could never really see into it. That's why the Apostle Paul says these stony tablets where is your heart. Because your body being the temple, if you go into the sanctuary where your heart is, today we don't have living hearts, we don't have spiritual life. We're dying. Why? Because written on our heart is this commandments of men, these carnal commandments of this deity of vengeance, this material carnal consciousness. We're not yet awake. But what's interesting is there are 3 of these arks that are mentioned in the Bible. The first one was made by Noah. Now, the interesting thing about the ark that Noah made was that he got inside and saved him and all of his 8 kids. Now, as we've said, those 8 children, or those 8 people, they're not including him, there was 8. They were saved, delivered from this great transitional period. Like, it's almost like how they got through death. Remember, the waters represents the bottom side of the wheel, and down there in the waters, at the lowest point on the bottom of the wheel, the winter solstice, December 25th, was the birth of Saturnalius, or the birth of Set. That's where he's born. And so it's a very holy place for the darkness, right? For the Lord of this world, for the Philistines. And they worship this deity, Dagon, which is a fish deity. And he had a man's head, but the body of a fish. Well, no, he had a ram's head. So you've seen the picture at the bottom of, if you go to the astrological wheel, you'll see that there's a little goat-like creature that has what looks to be a fish body, but it's actually a dolphin. It's a mammal. And the reason for that fish body, that mammalian dolphin, is because it's at the bottom of the wheel, but it's because that's where the water starts, right? On December 25th, there are 3 houses that we go through this water. And this beast, that's the beast that the Bible speaks of in Revelation 13, 17 stuff, that comes up out of the sea. And it's also the same beast or whale, dolphin creature that Jonah was swallowed up in. And he went 3 days and 3 nights. So there's these 3 houses from December 25th to March 21st. And it's 3 houses of water in some sense, because you've got Pisces, you've got Aquarius, Aqua, water, Aquaman, and then this house of January, which is Oannes. And sometimes Dagon is called Oannes. In our Bible, he symbolizes John or Jonas. And remember, Peter was the son of Jonas, and he went to the Gentiles, and Jonas went to the Gentiles. But he didn't want to. He went kicking and screaming because the Lord was going to save all of his children. The people of Nineveh were the lost tribes of his sheep. And they had done wrong, and they had gone astray. And the Lord sent Jonah there to tell them that they needed to repent or terrible things were going to happen. Well, he didn't want to go, so a whale swallowed him up and he went through the water. And this represents the fact that all of us are going to get swallowed up by this beast. At the bottom of the wheel, we're going to go through the sea. And what does that mean? It means that we're going to go through these various animal bodies. become like the fish, then the birds, and the mammals, and the men. And graduate. And finally, we'll get our great white robes. So, the kingdom of Philistine, which is interesting because we call that area over there Palestine. We have for years. And so, you could call it the kingdom of Israel, right? Or you could call it the kingdom of Philistine or Palestine. If you're calling it Palestine, you're saying it's the kingdom of Satan. Is that what it means? And the kingdom of Satan had captured the ark. But like I said, there are 3 of these arks. So we've got the ark that Noah and his children and his wives and their wives were saved. It is some kind of an ark that has to, that it is some sort of divine protection. We're going to see that word protection here in a moment as we go through this very coded, symbolic parable here in 1 Samuel chapter 5 in a second. But the other ark I was telling you about that the Bible speaks of, aside from the Ark of the Covenant and Noah's Ark, is the ark that they made and put bitumen around and put Moses in. When Moses was born as a little baby, his mother put him in this little ark and set him on the Nile, in the swampy area near the Nile. And it's always been a very odd story to me as a child, hearing this, thinking, being told this is all real, this is not mythology, this is real. This all happened exactly the way it says. And maybe some of it was, maybe all of it was. But the primary point is that this is very symbolic. And the reason Moses was put into an ark is because Moses was a very important person. And of course, we call him Moses, but in the ancient Egyptian, they called him Moshe. Like Ramesses or Amen-Moses, Tuthmoses, which is Thoth Moses. So Moses is a very common name for pharaohs. Why? Because Moses, being the very first of the Moseses, they would have Moses 1, Moses 2, Moses 3, or whatever. And they would always have this long title. So they would name themselves after the deities like Amun or Thoth or something. And there's another lineal descendant we call Joseph. You might not, it might blow your mind, but Amen-Hoseph, sometimes Amen-Hotep, but it's also spelled Amen-Hoseph, which is Joseph. Amen-Hoseph I was in the same period of time that our Bible says Joseph went down into Egypt and became the Pharaoh. But Joseph's father was Jacob, of course, and Jacob's father was Isaac, and Isaac's father was Abraham, and Abraham was the first of the pharaohs of this particular dynasty, and he's literally called Ibrahim or something like that, and people don't realize it's Abraham. And it tells you these deities, the names of these pharaohs, and it's literally historical. So yes, the Bible as we know it is some kind of an historical record. The only reason that it may not be completely literal is because the record is describing thousands of years, and sometimes certain individuals are not it's not talking about a particular individual. It may be coded, not just in our Bible, but it may be coded also in some other histories that we know in different countries. But what becomes very interesting once we see this is that the ark then is really not just, like, why would it be called the box? Like, this is the box. It's not really the box, right? It is a box, but that's not what it is. It's a sarcophagus. It's a coffin. That's what this box is. So why is it we're going to get saved in a box? That's death, right? Well, we are saved through death. And Osiris was saved in the coffin down through the waters of death. And Noah was saved in a coffin. Now, what coffin is this? Well, we have a physical body, which we live in. But when we die, you see, we wouldn't make it through the waters of the astral realm. We wouldn't make it through the afterlife, through hell, through the duat, if it weren't for the boat that came and saved us. And the boat is the one boat, or the body of Christ, that we're all saved in. This is why it's got bitumum around the outside. It's anointed. That's what Christ means. Christi, or to be christened, or to be anointed. So the box is anointed, and it's a spiritual box. Yes, it is a structure, but it's not material. It's not of this physical world. It's of a different dimension. And everybody who ever dies must go through this great mystery. We will be saved in the ark. Everybody will be. And those 8 that were saved in the ark of Noah represent 8 particular, very interesting, special things. Parts of our existence that must be preserved. And so everything's preserved by the divine providence of our Heavenly Father. That's what this is about. This is the story of death and life. This is the story of Jacob, or Jason, going around the wheel on his journey. So, at the bottom of the wheel is the land of the Philistines, and that's the kingdom of Satan. And so the ark then is going to give us salvation. We need a place to live. You see, a person can't be alive and enjoy existence without a body. A spirit without a body is just a disembodied spirit. And without your body, you can't really function. You can't really enjoy life. You need a body to walk around. It's the material imaging, the image. So it's like saying if you didn't have a body, you wouldn't have thoughts. So it'd be like you would be sleeping. You'd be unconscious. So the fact that anyone who is a divine being has to think in their image, and therefore this imaging is something that comes from that inner source that we talked about yesterday, from the light, and it's there by the providence of that light that we are taken care of, we are in His arms, and nothing can ever happen to us, is so reassuring, and gives me, particularly, it gives me great comfort to know that these things are taught in the Scriptures. And for those who have eyes to see, with the eyes of faith, we know that these things are true. And it's just a shame that the world has lied. People like Jehovah's Witnesses and Constantine and other evil apostates have hidden this from the babes. But we see that Satan, or the land of Satan, had captured the ark of Elohim. And he brought it to, here's this word even. I don't know why they're using that word, ha-ezer. This is one word, even ha-ezer. It literally, eben means stone. And not just like a big rock or something, but more like a stone, or even it's used for a precious stone at times. So it could be a precious stone or some kind of a pebble or a stone. But it's the stone of Ezar, which they say means protection or help. Help more in the sense of a protection. So it was the stone of protection. What kind of stone would protect you? Especially when it's not some big stone or a fortress that's protecting you. We're not talking about a big fortress. We're talking about a very small stone. Well, stones or amulets have always been protectors, and so it really isn't saying that any kind of stone can protect you. But what it is saying is that there is a magical quality to this particular stone, because of the fact that it may be a kind of a crystal, or this stone may have been particularly blessed. Remember how some of these stones, like the stone that Jacob raised up and anointed, and that stone became Bethel, and it was a place where you could ascend into the heavens. So what is this particular stone really? That through it you can reach heaven. Well, now, it is a portal, isn't it? It's a gate. And so what kind of a gate would we be talking about? Well, certainly there are energies and vortices in this world that Christians have never been told about, but it is through meditation and higher consciousness that we achieve this. But it can also be achieved through certain amulets and herbs, and what we're saying is basically through the mind. Now, the mind, of course, is energy waves, thought waves that image out and make forms. So to reach a higher state of consciousness, sometimes people use affirmations or blessings, prayer. So when you have a crystal, it's a lot like today. We have computers, and all this information is stored in a little computer chip. A computer chip is literally a crystal.